thank you for inviting us here and giving us a chance to talk to you. We represent the builders in the room in many respects, which I hope you see as an important partner in executing a lot of the visions that you all as design professionals and technologists have. And we hope to share with you a notion of partnership on a broad scale that will enable the execution of so much of what we're all trying to achieve here. So sort of they bring back this idea of what can a master builder be using data as a tool and as a fuel for that. So I think we're all extremely familiar with the criticisms of our industry, particularly the construction industry, in terms of our inefficiencies and all of the challenges that that brings in terms of our inability to truly manifest the overall project vision due to delays, due to value engineering. I know how dreaded that is for all of us. And the basic sort of change in cost overruns and time delays that occur within our industry. And we believe that working together, there is a solution for that. And that's really the role that we're trying to play and why we're presenting to you today. In general, when we look at the challenges that we face within our industry, we know that these are problems that beget themselves. They start feeding upon themselves. We lose predictability. Our clients lose confidence in our ability to deliver. Costs go up, challenges go up, pressures go up, and we're unable just collectively to achieve everything that we aim to achieve. And nothing could be more frustrating for all of us than that particular challenge. And we're here to solve for that. And one of the things we found in our own internal research within the company, and then obviously on the side, and I think we've all heard this, but that so much when we're in construction itself, this is during the construction phase, a lot, and some of this is of course builders blaming someone else other than themselves. I mean, I get that too, but the lack of completeness or coordination of critical issues within the documentation, within the design itself, not the vision, but the actual details of putting it together that go beyond just means and methods, but how the building comes together in a coordinated and complete way becomes a significant stumbling block for us as we're building. Now, that is a challenge that we think, again, working together is something we can resolve. And we think that the tool for that is going to be really a data-enabled, just as in the previous presentation, right? A data-enabled sort of vision for how can we solve more of those problems. Now, we've all seen this. I'm sort of hashing over something in this. I think it's interesting. This slide, there's a slide quote in here from Stephen Kieran and James Timberlake from Refabricating Architecture, a book which was published in the early 2000s, so 20 years ago, when I was first coming out of architecture school. Interestingly, a little side, it was super exciting to present after MVRDV. I don't know if anyone knows, there's this great book published in the late 90s called Pharmax, which was sort of the beginning of a lot of that discussion that we just saw. Super inspiring to me when I was in graduate school. So just really exciting to be here to see that. Book's way out of print and I've never been able to find it, but anyway. So this is a great quote from that book, Refabricating Architecture, again, 20 years ago. And it's so exciting to be in a room now where we're seeing a lot of things that they were talking about back then really finally starting to manifest themselves. We're at a really, really great time. But the idea here of we've got the tools right now to do this. And these are the tools. And I love this analogy of going back to the Renaissance, back to, of course, our good friend, Brunelleschi, who I'm sure we all know so much about. But this guy who was able to be an architect, an engineer, right? He built the machines that were used to build the dome itself in the Duomo in Florence. Amazing visionary, amazing capabilities. I also think it's really cool that this guy sort of resuscitated, figured out perspective, right? So he was also, a visualizer and an architect and an engineer and a builder, right? And what I'm trying to say here in this slide is That's all great, but that building was a different time. That's a different level of complexity, a different level of issues that we're facing. When we look at all of the people that it takes to build a building together, right? We know that we need to go super fast on the, or flashing the slide, sorry. We need to bring all of the people together to make our buildings happen. It's not the vision of a single person any longer. And that's just not the case. So what we're really doing here at Suffolk, in our company, is we're trying to use data as a resource to bring our project teams together, to bring the builder, to bring the design teams, to bring our trade partners, and to bring our clients together with a common tool. So, in general, sorry.
So if the currency today is data, so that we can unify all the stakeholders and bring us back closer to that master builder world, but of course, data enhanced, technology enhanced. What is the actual data that we're looking to bring together? So from our design teams, we obviously have all the spatial information ranging from, during the conceptual design through to constructability review, and then eventually to the constructible BIM model itself. This is all the spatial information that we have, right? From our pre-construction team, all of the pricing information, the work scope, as well as schedules, conceptual schedules based on typical production durations. From project management, once you're into the construction phase, there is a huge variety of information. P6 schedules, weekly work plans, 6-week look-aheads, all of the construction administration documents, RFIs, submittals, change orders, financials, safety, increasingly novel information types like image data and sensor data. So you see up there, we have a solution called Open Space, which we use to actually capture the physical reality of our buildings as they go up. And this way, we're not limited to just sort of structured information or information that someone has to type into a computer somewhere, but an actual physical representation of the build. In the past, all of this information were just sitting in separate silos in different systems that didn't really talk to each other. Over the last 5 years at Suffolk, what we've done is bring them all together into a single data repository, cleaned it, harmonized it, stitched it together, and just basically prepped it to serve it up to all of our frontline professionals at different stages so that they can use the data to better take decisions. Today, we have a repository of hundreds of projects, over 100 terabytes of information across 25 data systems in our data repository. So in terms of then usage of data, where do we start? We started with transparency, and we started with transparency on the construction side. So, when data was tied up in silos, no one person could see the full picture of our projects. And projects are very complicated things, right? You got to piece together the information across your schedule, safety, financials, construction admin to really understand how the job was going. And sometimes there's a danger in complex projects that's being too, focused on a small part of the project and losing sight of the big picture. There's also an issue with projects being kind of a little bit their own islands. They're geographically dispersed, they have their own P&L, they have their own clients. And so particularly in today's environment where labor is tight, we have a lot of young professionals coming into the construction industry that don't have a wealth of experience necessarily. Transparency of the project to senior management and regional leadership was also important. So support could be given if needed before it became too late, right? So we decided the first place to start with our data was just to give transparency. We collected it from the projects, we're going to share it back to the projects. And so we built a project dashboard that gave full transparency in near real time, automatically fed to all our job sites, where they can see your high levels. Where are you on budget, on schedule, on safety? Where are you on the next level down, which is, we call it leading indicators or potential indicators of risk, PCOs, CEs, allowances, contingencies, buyout schedule. Talk about then action items. Where are we with requisitions, RFIs, submittals, labor, punch? And over time, we're constantly tweaking this to add information that will be helpful to our project teams, right? So, and then each one of these, you can drill into more. Hey, if we have PCOs, right? Which ones exactly are they? What's the age? How do I action? It has to drill down to like an action level before things can be acted upon, right? So in summary, it summarizes project performance. It aggregates upwards and synthesizes in real time. It cements an information interface for our project team. So over time, we can add more information and add more insights to it. And then over time, what we can do with this is actually bring together the wealth of our experience across multiple projects and suggest benchmarks, suggest leading kind of predictions of what could happen if issues aren't dealt with, to actually provide nudges on behavior so that folks will take the action that they need to take. And then last but not least, culturally, what we found after we've rolled this out was that it is a career accelerant, because by being able to see the forest for the trees, a lot of younger professionals are now able to have much more senior conversations and understand what was on the mind of senior management and of the client whenever they were talking about the project. So I think this is the first step that we did in terms of using our data. The next thing that we did then is to actually say, all right, now that we have all of this measurement in place, let's think about the concept of a safety net. The safety net of saying, hey, if a project once is fully designed and fully priced with a baked schedule, everything from that point on is a defense game. It is about not eroding time, not eroding margin, and then keeping the highest standards of safety and quality. And so, a safety net of data can be constructed across these projects by taking all the measurements that we were showed previously on the project dashboard. Now we set tolerances, we set benchmarks, we highlight exceptions, and then we have a mechanism for dealing with the exceptions. So, and then finally, increasingly, once you have this net, you're looking forwards, you're trying to be very proactive. So we have forward predictors of risk. Hey, if a certain set of factors on a site, like the supervisory ratio, the weather, the schedule stacking, and the high-risk observations mount up, then we have a risk of potentially a safety incident happening. And therefore, what do we do about that, right? So this whole idea about casting a data safety net across our projects helps us play that defense game using data to make sure that we don't erode the margin and time that Chris has spoken about earlier. But defense is not the only thing that data can play. We first start with defense, but we can also go on the offense.
Right, thanks. Thanks, Jackie. So the idea here is for us then to take that data that we are harvesting during the construction phase, and how can we use that to better inform and share with each of you during the design phase the key pieces of data and information that you need to make the best decisions to realize an optimized design. I mean, we talk about optimization of design. It's important to always understand that, design, and I think we all get this, that cost, schedule, scope are the key factors that make a project buildable and executable. In the end, we want to get things built. We're builders. And so how do we work together to make sure that really happens? By using the data we can collect on our projects, our real projects, we can understand cost, information for materials, for assemblies, for labor rates. We can understand the schedule impacts of all of that information. And then we also can understand the questions and issues that come together, the key points of conflict that make the build process challenging, so we can solve for those during the design phase. And so we've built within our pre-construction estimating team some pretty robust tools around cost estimating and schedule analysis. They are real-time live document or live cloud-based software applications that allow us to track real-time cost information and then apply that into our schedule generation. So the idea here is we have this tool called Cost Lab that allows us to very rapidly generate cost estimates project from that cost estimate, knowing labor rates, knowing specific durations that are required for a particular cost factor, how long it is likely to execute a particular action in the field. We can generate that particular schedule from that. We have cost data here, as you can see in the upper left, that's historical pricing. So we know on all of our projects, the past, what the cost per ton of steel happens to be. A little out of whack right now, but in general, we're able to do those sort of things. What was really interesting about the system that we've created is then you go from the estimate phase to the buyout phase, right? Where we're actually generating the GMP with our subcontractors. We feed back into our system the costs that were assumed during that buyout phase. Then when we actually wrap up the project in the end, sort of in a post-mortem sort of model, are able to take the real-time labor rates and durations, real-time schedule, and the actual final cost and feed that back in. Our database becomes much more rich and robust as we do that every time. Then we are also, actually work with Jackie and her team through a natural language processing analysis of almost 120,000 RFIs as a test that we get in the field, right? So we as a company generate gobs of RFIs. And we have an ability, we've been trying to analyze those RFIs to understand what are the hot topic issues that keep coming up repeatedly over and over and over again, so that we can focus our collective attention on some of those details when you guys are preparing your final construction documents in the end, right? And so as we look through this and as we start analyzing this, you know, we've got a ways to go on this, but we are using it in terms of a check, sort of creating our own sort of checklists and areas of hot areas of focus. But you can look at some of this information and see that, for example, ductwork kept coming up as an issue with particular subtopics associated with it. We were able to attach those RFIs to change orders, so we knew what the value of that particular information was, right? And then we were able to sort of make an analysis that, based on the frequency with which this particular issue occurs and the cost of that particular issue, there is a value in us being hyper-focused on that particular topic, right? None of this should be rocket science, but it's really cool that we have the data and the ability now to harvest that information and start being better at predicting where challenge areas are going to occur, so that as a design team, we can work together to solve those particular points, right? And so ultimately, we're trying to take this to a point where we can share all of that information with you, and we can work together collaboratively using our data and using tools that we collectively and individually are developing. So as we look at this sort of workflow that we've got before us, if we had sort of a design vision, design models that we can work together on, right? And then we can start importing into that particular details from a particular library that we know are vetted and have particular cost and constructability and labor rate insights built into them, start plugging that in, and then having an iterative process back and forth with the design team through the actual digital model itself, gradually refining and tweaking that particular design solution, so that as we're developing the design, as you are developing the design from a functional aesthetic standpoint, we can imbue that solution with actual predictable cost and schedule ramifications. And this is sort of this collective vision of when we talk about sort of a data-based master builder, that's the idea, that you've got builders here who are partners who have information that they can share with you, information that only you can use because of the rigor and sophistication of the tools that you have at your disposal. So as we go through that particular process, we get to an ultimate vision where we have this incredibly data-rich model with all of the information that we would need to generate specifications and better construction documents, which we can then use to have a much more predictable and successful build out. I'm going to sort of close with a piece of software that we've been developing internally called Cost Lab. I'm actually not sure how to make it play. Okay, there we go. So this is a generative design piece of software that we have developed internally within Suffolk that has a tie-in directly with our cost database and is a product that we can share the output of with you to iterate back and forth on. So you can see we're selecting a site here, programming it with a residential block over residential over with a little mixed use podium level. And then through various series of tweaks on this, this is all very practical, nuts and bolts, developer-driven kind of assumptions here, but we're able to generate the most efficient unit layout with elevator cores, proper egressing sizing, proper mechanical ventilation within that particular space, which is important because we are using it ultimately to generate a cost estimate and schedule. So it has to have a lot of practicality built into it. And it can't just be a per square foot analysis. What we're really looking at here is something that plugs in very directly. You can see here, sort of plugs in very directly with the cost estimate so that you have actual quantity survey as you're going through it. And then we can output this model to Revit, share with you, which you can then come back and we rerun the system over and over again, arriving at that ultimate sort of optimized design solution. So I hope the message here is that we as builders are here to partner with you. We have particular set of both data, but also ambition to solve for some of the same problems that I hope you're trying to solve for. And I hope you can see us and the build industry as partners, which will go a long way to solving a lot of the challenges that we face as an overall industry. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.